this is the first of many of our Patrice mandated once a month we get together and talk to each other.
I second this motion.
We've decided it's happening. We're overthrowing your government.
Let's do this, team.
Welcome back.
All right. Nope, we'll do it the other way. Welcome back to Change Ed,
Changed.
Change it.
Season 2.
your number one podcast for curiosity.
Oh,
That's the word of the day.
it sure is.
I am your host, Andrew Kuhn, education consultant, number one education consultant from Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. And here with me on the WOA Nation train is...
Is that sticking?
I guess so.
I am Patrice Semichek, also out of the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, and I do work.
Occasionally. Sir?
And Tony Marabito, Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit.
He also does work.
Occasionally.
Wow.
We have an awesome topic. Actually, honestly, one of my favorite things that I love to talk about and have found that I'm very... That sounds so weird.
One of my favorite things that I love to talk about because I love it is being curious.
Is talking.
Is
Curious.
talking where everyone looks at me because I am
Curious.
so great.
Aren't you curious what I'm going to say next?
Curious like a cat. My friends
Nope.
call me Whiskers.
Whiskers.
I'm going to write that down for
That's
later.
sticking. Here with us is Whiskers.
Hmm.
Okay, Andrew. What do you love so much
The
that you like
Whispers of
to
Andrew.
do?
Another WOA.
No,
That's from Will Ferrell skit SNL. Best of SNL.
they call me Whiskers.
Yeah. I'm curious like a cat. My friends call me Whiskers.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
We have spent the month talking about curiosity. Is it the beginning or the end of the month?
No idea. We're going to spend October.
We are going to spend some
When
time
this comes
for
out,
some
we
podcast.
decided
Whenever you listen to this, it might be at the
October.
beginning, it might be at the end.
Maybe they didn't listen. to
We
all
will
the
have talked
curiosity
about
stuff.
or will be talking about curiosity.
Tony's going to be like, I'm never coming out again. These two idiots. These who put microphones in
Space
front of
the
these
Infinite
two.
Frontier with Harry Carey is when he does it.
Oh, I like how we're on
I was
four
so
different
curious
levels.
about that. Thank you for answering my
I
curiosity.
feel very much like talking about the SNL. I feel very much like is it Sherry? No, who did that? Where they were on like NPR.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel
Alec
very
Baldwin.
much like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So like you're over here talking about something, and we're like, and Andrew's over here talking about something completely different. It's awesome. Andrew and I had the amazing pleasure of going to South by Southwest. For those of you who don't know what South by Southwest is, it is a like tech AI. Are you looking up like the actual title? No. Okay. Helpful. It's this very cool conglomerate. It's in Austin, Texas. And we had the ability to go because we're going to something in San Antonio later that week. And it was an experience I don't think I'll ever have again. It was so cool to see the intersection between music and art and film and all of these things. And they have which we didn't go to, hopefully we're going to go to this year, they have an EDU strand. For all of these things that are music, film, all of these things in education. And how
Is it-
can you?
That stands for
SXSW conference?
Yes,
is that what?
it is.
This seems pretty awesome.
SXSW.
that stands for
And-
education. EDU is education.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So South by Southwest EDU is happening the first. I'm just still talking. It's happening the first week of March. So if you want to go, you should come with us. We
In
put
Austin, Texas. Never been. Would love to.
It is a fantastic town if you've never been. It is a lot of fun. Lots of music, lots of really great food. Not that Andrew would know.
I'm
'cause
interested
he
in the
eats
crossover.
plain chicken everywhere he goes.
It's weird.
Boiled.
Doesn't
He
surprise me,
prefers
though.
it boiled.
Probably like brings it. Probably like brings it in.
Mashed
Aluminum
potatoes. If
foil.
it's white, he eats
His
it. It's
pocket.
good. Lots of starches.
I'm interested in the crossover to education. Tell me more.
I haven't been. So I
Oh.
went to the normal one, the larger one.
Okay.
We didn't go to the EDU one. We're very excited about it. But we put in a proposal, and one of the strands is podcasting. Anywho, we sat in on this panel of this group called Now What. And this group, Now What, has created a curiosity profile. So you take a test and you can figure out whether or not you're an inner child, a rebel, a tinkerer, or a voyager. And the interesting thing about this is it asks you a few questions and then it comes up with this composite score. And one of the things that I found extremely intriguing is it feels similar to like learning styles, but different because we're talking about how do you show up in a curious space. And it's honoring the fact that like, are you an inner child? And when you think about what an inner child is, according to them, It's you're approaching curiosity like it's a playground. You're embracing the magic of like this super exciting stuff that's happening. Like you're just approaching it with a like wide-eyed curiosity.
So what was really interesting about it, and actually I'll say validating, was that in science we talk so much about curiosity. How do we ignite curiosity in our students? And so then to go to a session and hear them talk about curiosity in our everyday lives was like, wow. I found myself to be a very naturally curious person. Like someone will tell you something, I'm like, well, now I have 6 more questions,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah, I feel the same way.
I want to know more about what you're telling me. Like, how did you get to that spot? How did that, like, what happened before? What happened? You know, like I'm just very naturally curious, but then to attend the session and be like, there's a whole company that's like, this is what we do. We talk about curiosity. I'm like, yes, this is awesome. You know, also, we're empowering our students not just for science, not just for any part of STEELS. We're empowering them for life. Like we should just go through life being curious. Not that we know the answers, but we want to learn more. And by learning more, we have more questions and we want to continue to learn more. So being able to take this test also was, it provided a lot of like insight, but also like if I changed an answer to one thing, it might have changed my score a little bit. But then also to see within these 4 categories, there's a relationship that's going on there and it looks different for each person. So I score higher in one area and lower in another. That means that my curiosity works a certain way and yours might work differently. You might have the same order, but a different percentage for each. And so it just operates a little bit differently for you. So now curiosity doesn't have to just look one way. You know, there's a lot of different ways for it to look, which is empowering in the classroom too, to say there are a lot of different ways for you to get students involved or actually get them curious. It doesn't have to be one way. You can now, there's like this framework we can look at that says, well, there's actually a couple of different ways you can get engaged in curiosity or different types of curiosity that you have out there. And you can appeal to students in different ways.
But when we say like we want people to be curious, curiosity shows up differently for different people, which is why I liked the idea of having these 4 different styles. Because as a teacher, if I know I have a lot of inner child in my classroom, I know that they're all like approaching it like through wide-eyed wonder. But if I know I have some kids that are, say, for example, Voyagers, which Tony and I are Voyagers. So like we're looking at it like we have a treasure map and we're very excited to be following some things and thinking about it differently. And Andrew, no surprise to anyone, is a rebel, right? So he's just
awesome. Rebel time, folks.
So, like, according to this, is that he approaches curiosity like a blank canvas and rule breaking at heart challenges the status quo. Shocking to no one that Andrew is a rebel. But if I have kids in my classroom that identify as a rebel, I can then understand where they're coming from, and their questions aren't an insubordination or a frustration for me. That's just how they are curious about things. And so I, as the educator, can then take that information and move forward with it. I can also group my kids. If I want to probably don't want to put a whole bunch of rebels together, but I might want to put a rebel with an inner child and see what happens there and come out there. I think there's a lot to be said about the possibilities in education for this.
Yeah, I think a really cool way to do this also, my elementary mind comes back and I would love like a choice menu and making almost one project per each category. So 1 rebel, 1 inner child, 1 tinker, 1 voyager project with whatever content that I'm teaching and just kind of letting them loose on whatever they deem.
But it's speaking to their strengths, right? And so many things that we're doing, we're not speaking to their strengths. We're trying to figure out their areas of need and how do we fill in those gaps. But if we know that they're going to thrive in this manner, how can we then leverage that to get them to learn the content that we want them to learn?
This is spot on for me too. The second question underneath Voyager says, where's my next rabbit hole? And that's my life. I can just get lost on my next rabbit hole. So that's pretty cool.
But what's interesting is, Tony, you and I are both Voyagers, right? But my score for Voyager is 62. And what's yours?
Mine is a 58.
So they're relatively high, but your next closest one is?
Tinkerer.
Which is at?
46.
Okay, so I'm Tinkerer at 36. Wow, this is cool. Andrew?
Andrew's 100% rebel.
Everything else is a 0.
No, I thought he's like 89% rebel and the rest of it's inner child. Focus on the
Moving
child.
on. One of the things that I was thinking about with this is that in high school, I remember taking a career aptitude test where you might be interested in these things or something, you know, and so kind of like placed me and like, these might be things you're interested in. But I actually feel like something like this would be a great first step. Like, what am I actually curious in, or what is my style of curiosity? And then do something like that, right? I might answer it differently, understanding more about myself and how I interact with the world. And honestly, myself now would answer things differently than myself then. I didn't really,
Yeah, for
18-year-old me didn't have the same appreciation that 19-year-old me does now.
19 plus 30.
But knowing this information and this test is very helpful because they also provide some explanations that say, what does that mean? But then it's part of your own journey to figure out how do all of these work together. Because honestly, Tinkerer for me was the lowest that I received, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think it's just the way I answered things, but I do love to get into things and kind of tinker them. But then I could see the rebel part of it and like, well, why did we do this? Or how about this? For example, I was just with my brother and sister-in-law and their family, and they have small children. They have one of those little cars that you push. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be great if you could like attach like a handle of some kind and like push the kid from farther away. I'm like, but that's my brain's always thinking about what could we
From
do
farther away, because being close to little children is too much for you?
Well, no, because as you've kindly pointed out, I am like a pop. So otherwise you can lean over the car. You're hunched over pushing it. So I need something to keep my body up. It's almost like a walker. That's more what I was thinking.
Okay. That tracks.
Because a 19-year-old back is already shot. I guess.
Yeah, you have no idea, man. You just wait. At 17, you're like, I got it all. That's where you're at right now.
Once
But at
19 hits, it's all downhill.
Yeah. No one's listening to this podcast. Not a single person. No one is curious about what we're
They're
talking
curious about how we're still running. That's
Yeah.
what they're curious about.
Looking at the website for this conference, their expo page looks like an adult makerspace. And the companies in the exhibitor hall are really, really cool. Anywhere from like the U.S. Army to like Penguin to Clearinghouse. The conference looks pretty cool.
Probably one of the coolest conferences I've been to.
You can't help but walk in there and be like, wow. Like there's an energy.
But it's like the
in that
latest
space.
and greatest, and everyone's super excited, and it's very creative in its own nature. Just the topics that they're talking about, and they're talking about how can AI integrate with music and art. There's a lot of conversations around art and AI and music and AI and who owns it. I totally agree that needs to be a conversation, but it felt very free to be in this space to talk creatively. How all of them can interconnect as opposed to being against each other. So it just felt very. I don't know. I loved it. I loved being there.
Each IU in Pennsylvania, I think, has a space where this space that they can connect with thinks outside the box, and that it feels like a fluid space and ideas flow, and you can and in Montgomery County, that's the flex space is one of those spaces for us where people walk into it and they're like, man, if every school building could be like this, it would just feel so different. That's the feeling you get when you go to this conference. I mean, Austin, Texas is a beautiful artistic city, and so you've already got that vibe just landing there and walking into that space. And then that's just how the whole thing goes. We're like, let's think outside the box. So for those of us who are rebelly inclined, you feel like you're home, right? Like the other like-minded people who are thinking outside the box. But I think you can actually easily find it is a space of curious people who want to learn more, who have questions, who, want to lead by example, but also can admit that they don't know everything. And so you find all types of curious people are in that space.
Yes. And you're also in this space with like tech giants. Like there are people from Apple and there are people from Spotify and there are people from all tech giants sharing their learning with you in a way that was so open. Like everything is behind a paywall. Everything's behind a paywall. But when you go there, they're like, yeah, we did this and we did this and this is how you learn from this. And it was a very good experience.
I think it'd be refreshing for teachers to go to a conference where I'm sure they didn't talk about standards or testing and just to focus on curiosity and new tech and just cool stuff that kind of will re-energize you, but still kind of keep you in that EDU kind of umbrella.
Yes, I'm curious to see how the EDU one is different than the traditional one.
I
I
really
think
need to
that'll be
see.
really interesting. It was a phenomenal experience. I would love to see something. I feel like Pete kind of gives me a little bit of that feel without the like arts and music and things like that. But I feel like
And Hershey's a little bit different than I would assume.
a little different. Yeah.
But definitely a similar vibe. If you were to take Pete and make it a national affair,
It's very much like, here's
Yeah,
some cool stuff.
it's
I
a
want you to
very
try this. I
similar
think
idea.
it's really cool. Like no paywall. Like, I don't know. It's cool.
so the encouraging part is like you can find that here in Pennsylvania. You
Yes.
can find that locally.
Yes.
You don't have to go to this type of event.
No.
And if you're not able to, your favorite podcast will pipe
Encourage
you in
you
and
to
give you
be-
that information.
Creative.
Well, is there anything from what do you Voyager Land that you'd like to say as a closing thought?
I think that there's huge potential in this, and I would like to see the three of us or whoever else who wants to join in. How can this interlace with what we're doing in Steels? And how can we leverage curiosity styles with teaching? Like, what could the impact be? I think there's huge potential here. So if anyone wants to join in my quest, hit me up.
Hit me up.
Peace, Semicheck.
Team Money?
Yeah, that's the first thing I Googled because I kind of like where Patrice was going with that. And there's already articles on how curiosity-driven learning can make educational both practical and powerful. And I think if we could take this and apply it to schools and take something like Steels or take something that's maybe not as exciting like long division or something like that and put it in a more curious, practical way that could be more relatable for students and put it into like real-life examples and get students interested and curious about it, we'd probably see better results.
I totally agree. I think I know when I'm curious about something, I'm definitely, maybe that's the tinkerer in us, Tony.
I couldn't wait to just take
Going
the test
down
because I was curious.
The rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
exactly.
like we'll go down the rabbit hole. Andrew doesn't really care so much because he's a rebel. He just wants to buck the system at all points.
Which is why we love him.
I really appreciate those very nice things that you both had to say that were so informative. Tone matters.
Tone matters. We don't want robot Andrew. We want real Andrew.
For myself, and this is probably my rebel side, I love the possibility of this and what it could mean, not knowing where it's going to end up. One of the things I thought of was as a teacher, probably any teacher that works with a fifth grader and up, I could be off. It could go down lower. Number one question they get is, when will I ever use this in my life?
Yeah, my fourth grader asks it all the time.
Okay, so there we go. Now we're down to fourth grade. This is one of those weird curiosities everywhere, right? Like it's not just in the science classroom. It's not just here, not just there. It's everywhere. So we're going with this bigger umbrella. So as Patrice is saying, there's so much potential for this, but you don't know where it's going to go. So you know somewhere down the road, all the dots are going to align. That's a paraphrase from Steve Jobs. But you know they're going to align, but you don't know where they're going to align. The great rebel Jedi master, Steve Jobs.
That's an assumption. Have you seen his scores?
They're below mine. Anyway.
Below yours. It's not a contest.
I'm starting my own company
What
called
were you, 72? Called Rebel? Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
98.
Starting my own company called Mango.
I'll reach out today, see if he was 73.
So,
Mango.
yeah, what, apple, mango, banana, fruit? I don't know.
Squash.
Squash.
I need an explanation of why that joke was funny. Coco, go on.
Thank you,
It's usually
Voyager.
better when you have to explain them.
Don't forget to subscribe and like our videos.
This train wreck is over.
So, there's a ton of potential, and this to me is really good ammunition to go back with when you get that question, no matter what you're teaching in Steels, to say, this is just about being curious. Like asking questions. Asking questions is a good thing. And actually, in a lot of ways, this is a transformative opportunity for us in education because as we've talked about where we've come from in education, it was all about knowing. Well, if you know you're not really curious, you're ready to fire off the answer. So that's what we see in Jeopardy. I know the answer, I know the answer, I know the answer, versus some of those other game shows where Mythbusters, where it's, let's just try it. Let's ask some questions. Who knows where this is going to go? I don't know. I have a hunch, but I don't know. And so we want to foster curiosity in any way and highlight what's already in our students, not take out from them what's there. We want to make sure we keep it in and encourage it.
I was going to say something, and you did a perfect wrap up, so I'm not going to say it now.
No, that's why I'm the host. Big bucks over here.
I was going to say sometimes science topics were very boring to me, and then ESPN came out with sports science, and as soon as they applied velocity, trajectory, all that kind of stuff to like a football player or pitching, locked in. Yeah. So even as soon as science becomes relatable to a student's life. Don't
forget to like and subscribe to your favorite podcast.
With your favorite host.
The WOA team.
It's WOA?
Whoa.
It's whoa.
Without Andrew. Or Whiskers of Andrew, which we talked about earlier.
Whiskers of Andrew? Not cool, bro.
Let's stick with without. That feels better.
Whiskers of Andrew.
Well, that was earlier in the podcast. We talked about the whisker.
That's your applause for your jokes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary
like
Poppins.
Something straight out of like Assassin's Creed or something. It's a video game.
Actually, a pretty sweet video game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The ADD in this room
It's tough, I know.
is unbelievable.
All right, start over.
How long have we been recording, Patricia? You usually yell at me.